So when you're thinking about sponsor versus placement, so there's a few different things to think of. So sponsorship basically means somebody that you've personally enrolled. That could be a customer or a business builder, right? And your personal enrollments, that means you're their sponsor. And the sprints always are going to pay out through the sponsor or enroller pathway, right? So somebody that you sponsor or enroll directly, the sprint is going to pay you on that level one. The level two is always going to go to an upline sponsor from you, either your direct sponsor or a sponsor upline who is qualified if your direct sponsor isn't qualified for that level two. So sprints always pay out through the sponsorship level or pathway, right? Placement is essentially the difference between if you sponsor someone, you can place them on your front line, or you can choose to place them further down in your organization on your level two or your level three underneath somebody else who is on your front line. We allow you the flexibility to place somebody further down in your organization up to 3 levels so that you have the ability to help others within your organization to build their teams and their structure. So there's a difference between, sponsor is the connection of who's enrolled that person. Placement is where they are in the tree. Frontline to you, or on your level two, or on your level three, frontline to somebody else who's down one of those other levels. The payouts, again, the sprint is always going to pay out through the sponsor. So even if, let's say, Kali, you sponsored or enrolled me, if I was in your organization, but then you placed me on your level three underneath a couple other people, my initial order would still pay out the 25% level one to you on the sprint, because that's how sprints pay out, is to the sponsor, right? The level two of my initial order would pay out to your sponsor or the next sponsor up who's qualified. However, when it comes to the baseline is paid out through the placements, right? So my reorders, right? My reorders would pay out in this way, right? So any of my reorders would pay out through the placements based upon this structure. So if I'm on your level three, the 5% level one payout would go to the person that I'm placed directly beneath, so long as they're qualified, right? The level two would go out to the person they're directly placed beneath. The level three of my reorder would go to you, right? And so that's how the payouts work differently. So for Premio, let me go through those specific kind of qualifiers, right? So to reach the rank of Premio, you have to have an order value in that given month of 200 QV. So that would be essentially like two Primos, right? That would give you 200 QV in your personal monthly order requirement. The second requirement is personally enrolled. You would need to have 5 people that you've personally enrolled. That could be business builders or customers. And they don't have to be placed front line to you. They could be placed anywhere within your first 3 levels. But there are 5 people that you have personally enrolled, customers or business builders. The team requirement for Premio is 3 teams, 1 team that's doing at least 5,000 in QV, 5,000 QV in volume for that month, and 2 teams each, which are doing 20,000 in total team volume within those 2 teams. And then the fourth and final requirement is your total organizational GQV, or group qualifying volume, needs to be at 50,000 or above. So again, just those 4 different requirements. Now to go beyond that into, so essentially think of this, we're calling this essentially a Premio 50K. And for other levels beyond that, there would be specifics to each of these 4 requirements specific to that.
All right, perfect. So just again for clarifying, because I think people that are confused are comparing it to what a former company had that's very similar in the placement. So when you say the teams, are those placement legs? Do I have to have 3 separate placement leg, 1 at 5 and 2 at 20, or are these enrollment legs?
These are placed, so they can be placed by you. Well, placed frontline, right? The teams start from frontline to you, but they don't have to necessarily be your personally enrolled people placed frontline to you. So if you think about it, let me just find.
Well, that clarifies if it's placement legs. I think a lot of people are under the impression that these were enrollment legs. So The only enrollment are people. And then the
Yep.
rest of
There's
them are
separate.
placement
Yeah.
links that could be sponsored by you, or they could have been somebody placed there from an upline.
Yeah, but it has to be stemming from your front line. Like if you enroll somebody and you place them 2 or 3 levels down, the team doesn't start from there. It's the placements on your front line that are your team leads, right? And that could be your personal enrollment, or it could be an upline sponsored placement that is placed on your front line that could count as a team. So we've separated out the qualifiers, so it doesn't, the teams do not have to be your personal enrollments. And so that allows you and your upline sponsors to help team members below you to qualify and to rank up by putting placements down there when it makes sense, where it makes sense to help grow those teams underneath them.
Perfect.
So
Thank
it
you.
simplifies that structure from a past life that you're referencing. It simplifies the structure. It makes it much easier to rank up because it's not connected. It doesn't have to, your personal enrollments do not have to be personally enrolled, frontline, team lead, sponsors to then stem those from. It doesn't have to all be connected like that. Think of these 4 qualifiers as 4 separate things. They could be, they could be connected. Your personal enrollments could be your frontline placements and could be your team leads that are those big qualifying teams, but they don't have to be. Okay, horizontal compression. Can you see this slide here?
Yes.
So horizontal compression, essentially, it allows you to build wide and not have to think, oh man, if I've got a whole bunch of people on my direct front line, I'm not really benefiting from them as far as my team and rank qualifications are needed. So, oh, that's frustrating. I'm not getting like a full qualified value if I'm building wide or adding a lot of customers to my front line or teams. So horizontal compression essentially simplifies that process. What it does, so in this scenario, for example, like, so this is the brand rep, this is you, and let's say you've got 6 different team leads frontline to you, either your direct enrollments or placed by uplines, and then you got a whole bunch of customers frontline to you as well, because you've sold to just a lot of consuming customers, and that's great. So you've got a bunch of frontline going on, and it's important to note that even though we talk about me plus 3, the reality is that the baseline structure is a unilevel structure, and there's nothing that says you need to stick to 3. You can grow and go as wide as you want. And the reality is that those who have the ability to build wide and deep are the ones that are going to win the biggest overall, because width and depth combined is very powerful. So don't be afraid to build wide, because what happens with horizontal compression is that the system will automatically look and say, okay, which 2 of their teams are the biggest? It'll essentially rank your teams from largest volume amount to smallest volume amount. And so the system essentially looks at it this way. It says, okay, this person has 6 teams that are building and then a bunch of customers. It then kind of groups them together and it says, okay, their biggest team is 25K in volume. Their next biggest team is 6,500 in volume. And then what it does, it says, if I was able, if I combined all these other teams, it doesn't actually move placement. It just says, if I combined all the other teams and the customers into one kind of quasi combined team, what would the volume of that team look like? And how could I then use that to rank this brand rep at the highest possible rank, so long as they have their other qualifiers, their personal QV, their personal enrollments, all that stuff, right? So essentially in this scenario, this person normally would only qualify as a venti, right? Because if horizontal compression was not in play, they would have one team that was at the 20K qualifier for a Premio rank, but they need 2 teams that are over 20K or above, and then one team at 5K in order to qualify as a Premio. But they don't have that naturally, right? They've just got, this would only qualify them for a venti because they've got essentially the 3 at the 5,000. Well, I forget what the exact qualifier is on that. I have to look at that. But anyway, they would only qualify as a venti. But with horizontal compression, it says the system automatically looks and says, okay, they've got one Premio team qualifier at 20K. They've got their second highest team is at 6,500. So that could count for the 5,000 qualifying team. Now, if I combine all their other teams and customer volume together, what does that equal? That equals 20,000. 20,000 is that other $20,000 team requirement for a Premio. So as long as those other requirements are in place, the personal QV of 200, the total group volume in the brand rep's entire organization is 50,000, and they've got 5 personal enrollments, horizontal compression automatically makes that third team that's that $20,000 or 20,000 in qualifying volume to level them up from a venti to a Premio. Yeah, so the holding tank we should have up and running. Like right now, everybody's just in a holding pattern in general, but the holding tank, which will allow you to then set the placements, we should have that in the next week or so. We'll definitely have that before orders are being taken and placed. But essentially what that will then allow you to do is when somebody comes in and enrolls through your link, they're automatically just kind of set on your front line, right? Your level 1. The holding tank essentially puts them in a holding pattern there and gives you the ability within 30 to 60 days of their enrollment to move that placement to somewhere within your first 3 levels. So you'll then have the chance to move that set the placement one time after their initial enrollment within 60 days. So that way you can then help others by placing people within their front line. Or let's say you have a meeting and you got 5 different people and you don't know really which one's going to kind of rise to the top as kind of a leader, but you want to kind of motivate them to work together, and maybe they're all friends, and so you want to keep them connected. You might put some sort of an incentive out there, like, hey, let's see who's really moving and shaking, and then you could structure that as a team that you could place underneath one of them. And so you'd have 60 days to do that. It could also be a regional thing where it's like, okay, you've got different connections or people that are getting enrolled regionally that you're connected to, and you might want to have them, instead of being placed frontline to you or somebody else that's not in that regional area, whether it's country specific or just geographically more localized, but you've got other leaders there. You could then, within your first 3 levels, place those enrollments within those other team structures. So you're still getting the benefit as far as the overall structure goes, the volume goes, the sprint payouts on their initial orders because you're the sponsor, but then you can have the flexibility to do those placements in that way.